All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Paris, and joined as I am on every one of these live hangouts that we do, I'm joined by my business partner, Robert G. Etman Jr. Good to have you with us, Bob.
Really looking forward to this one tonight, Jim.
And co-editor of our website and co-author of a bunch of books that we've written together. One comment on your screenshot, Bob, which I should have mentioned, is maybe like a little bit lower on your camera because your name, your little lower third thing sort of starts cutting off your chin just a little bit.
Oh, well, that's not good.
Yeah, there, just that tiny adjustment. There we go. There we go. All right, great. So what we're going to be talking about tonight, and by the way, it's kind of weird because when you travel completely across the country, you're just like in a fog. I just got back last night from San Francisco. So imagine this, that 2 days ago, Monday, I was standing on the Golden Gate Bridge. So here I am, I'm standing on the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm in Chinatown doing all the San Francisco stuff, and now here I am today. It's really hard to make that transition, not only time zone wise, but just you're kind of in a vacation mode, you're in a place that has lots of fun things to see, and then all of a sudden it's like you're back to reality, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm back to my real life, and I've got to take the garbage out because tomorrow's garbage day, and I've got to walk my dogs, and there's work to be done. Yeah, it's like, wow, I've got to make an adjustment here. It's no longer my big concern is like what's on the breakfast bar at the hotel. I've got to actually get back to like making my own breakfast and all that. But in any case, an interesting time. And I have to tell you, Bob, I got a lot of great like souvenirs, like martial arts stuff and all kinds of cool stuff. But my favorite couple of things I got in San Francisco are these Kung Fu style dress shirts. And I actually got two of them. One of them is black and one is like a dark green. And if you know what I'm talking about, Steven Seagal wears these shirts all the time. And I love these shirts. And my wife said, you know, where are you going to wear those if you buy those? And I said, I don't know, but they're just really cool. I'll just wear one to, like, I don't know, like if there's some kind of gathering of people from the martial arts school for a dinner somewhere, or even just to a friend's, you know, house, or, you know, go out to dinner and wear it. It's a great, they're really neat shirts and great conversation pieces, these Kung Fu style shirts. I was almost going to wear one tonight on the broadcast just to kind of show people what they look like, but they're a little bit just say interesting looking. I don't know how well the video would look with me wearing a shirt like that. But in any case, a lot of fun on the trip, and now I'm back, and now we're going to be talking tonight about podcasting. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into 5 steps of setting up a podcast. And before we do that, I want to cover a couple of things that I think are important introductory thoughts. And on each of these, I'll give you my 2 cents, and then I'll bounce it over to Bob Yetman and get his thoughts. The first thing is, Bob, that one of my big comments on podcasting whenever I teach this to our students in our internet marketing course, which we're going to mention how people can enroll in that tonight at the end, but one of my big comments is how podcasting, it takes a little bit more work than like writing a blog article. And so and maybe the next level up from that would be doing video production. So what you find is that each step along that continuum of difficulty or time investment, you have less people to compete with. So while there might be a ton of websites out there and a ton of blogs out there, there's a lot less podcasters than there are people who are bloggers. And then likewise, there are a lot less video internet people than there are either of those two categories. But one of the neat benefits of podcasting is you sort of join an exclusive club, a very small club of people that have made the commitment to produce regular audio for the internet. And I think, Bob, that's for a lot of really misplaced reasons. I think there are a lot of people that perceive that podcasting is a lot more complex than it really is. And so it keeps a lot of people away from podcasting that otherwise might be active podcasters.
Well, whenever we talk about presenting content in what I call to myself alternative formats, and they're not really alternative formats, but that's how I think of them within the oftentimes within the blogging community. Video, audio, something other than just traditional writing. I love talking about these topics because you hit on it at the outset, which is the moment you get away from just writing in terms of a way to develop content, the moment you get away from that, the number of people who are doing these different things drops off precipitously. And, I don't know exactly why that is, because it really doesn't take a whole lot more. I mean, podcasting's a little different, but like we've talked about just doing video in the most simplistic sort of way, where you know what a video is? A video is you flip on.
Right now we're making a video.
Yeah.
And you and I have had this discussion that sometimes, like, we'll do a podcast and we'll cover 4 topics.
Yeah.
And we'll do that in 30 minutes, and that would be the equivalent of writing 4 articles. And I'll tell you what, there's no way that we could crank out 4 articles in 30 minutes, even with the 2 of us working on that.
Well, and that's the thing, is that a lot of people are just, they're very good about just kind of talking off the top of their head. And when I come across somebody like that, I say, yeah, like I'll have somebody who will explain to me, like they're having a difficult time mapping out, say, an article or maybe even a short ebook or something like that. And I'll have them start telling me about it. And sometimes I'll suggest to them, have you ever thought of just flipping on a camera and doing exactly what you're doing now, or getting set up and doing a podcast? Like, we'll talk about podcasting. I've addressed that before in webinar presentations, and everybody's reaction is the moment you start talking about podcasting, we love it because it's like having your own radio show. But so many other people seem intimidated about it because it's like having your own radio show, and they don't really see themselves as being these radio hosts. But I have to tell you, with no particular offense to anyone out there, I've heard a lot of podcasters who I think in terms of their ability in front of the microphone, I think it leaves a bit to be desired, and yet they're out there plugging away, and they have a following.
And many of them are doing great because when you think about it, where media is going right now is people are consuming video like never before, and then of course the audio. I mean, you can listen to a podcast while you're out jogging, or you're at the gym, or even when you're working around the house, or in your car. You can plug in your mobile device and listen while you're on a long drive or a trip or whatever. It's a lot easier for people to consume the audio version. As much as we want to get all excited about Kindles and the ebook phenomenon and all that, and that's all there.
Sure.
What's old is new again. I mean, and from what I read today, preparing for tonight's broadcast, podcasting has just had a huge resurgence of interest. Because we no longer have to go out and buy an iPod. I mean, every phone, basically every smartphone now, and who doesn't have one, is set up to be able to download podcasts. So everybody has the device necessary to walk around and listen to these broadcasts. And what's amazing to me is that you can go into business with iTunes, in essence, which is set up a podcast, list it over at iTunes, and now it's like Apple is distributing your content all over the world via podcast. And when you look at Apple's recent transaction buying, what was the name of that headphone company that they bought, Dr. Beat?
Yeah, it's Beats, owned by Dr. Dre.
Owned by Dr. Dre. So $3 billion. And yeah, that's probably music intensive, but not necessarily completely. I mean, the idea of audio is huge right now. And, one of the things too, Bob, not only is there a perception that creating audio for the internet is difficult, and people think, well, I've got to be a really good off-the-cuff type of talker. There's a guy who, I haven't listened to his podcast in a long time, but his name is Mitch Joel, and it's just him and a little recording device. I'm going to hold this up here, and this is probably not the latest version of this, but this is called a Zoom H2, and this device, this goes for like $120, $130. I've had this one for 2 or 3 years, and you could basically just turn this on, and you can record, and then the little memory chip comes out of it here, and you can just put that into your card reader, and you could load that right onto the internet. Now you
Sure.
don't even need to have a separate device like this. You could just record right on your computer. But this guy Mitch Joel, he was an interesting guy to listen to, because like you would hear dishes crashing in the background, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's my wife in the other room doing the dishes." And he would not like go back and edit that out. And as much as someone might think, "Oh, well, that's horrible that he didn't, edit that out," it was kind of fun listening to him, because it's
Right.
like I'm listening to like a regular guy. In fact, his wife had just given birth, and he's on his podcast one episode, and he's just whispering, and he's talking, real soft voice, and he said, "I'm in the other room, and I'm keeping my voice down because our new baby is home, and the new baby's asleep." And those are kind of just interesting things to think about, or things to point out, that people don't expect the broadcast quality that you might imagine that they would expect. In fact, one of the most irritating things for me on podcasts are people that have these really long introductions with music and an announcer, and I've got to wait like a full minute before I can get into the content. I don't like that. I know that a lot of people do that. In fact, some of our podcasts that we have up on iTunes, we've got like a 30-second introduction. But honestly, you don't even really need that. And in fact, it could be irritating to your listeners to have to listen to a big 1-minute introduction, because it really is not a radio show. It's not, and people want to just get right down to business and hear what you have to say. And the other thing, too, just like we've talked about short ebooks, a podcast can be short. There are podcasts that have millions of listeners that are like 1 minute long, where people just give like a tip of the day, or a short podcast of like 3 to 5 minutes. You don't have to do a half hour or an hour. Many times you can get more comfortable by having two people on a podcast. So like in our case, Bob and I will connect via Skype, and that's how we record our podcast. And it's a lot easier when there's two people kind of hitting the ball back and forth. But Bob, your thoughts on just overall the kind of the misconceptions people have about A to Z on podcasting. And I just say it's another way to reach people. Some people like to consume information by reading an article. Others want to watch a video about it. In fact, oddly enough, the second most popular search engine in the world is, guess what? YouTube.
Yeah.
People don't think about that, but maybe you're a local business and you've got a great website, highly ranked, but you have nothing up on YouTube. You're really missing out. But the same thing could be said about podcasting. You're a lawyer. Maybe you want to have at least a 30-minute podcast telling people about yourself and what you do. Maybe you could hire someone to interview you to kind of share your life story, why you became a lawyer, what kind of clients you work with, what kind of cases you've handled. But Bob, before we get into the 5 points here, the 5 bullet points, your thoughts on, you and I have been doing podcasting for
Sure.
years, but it just seems like people are, for no really good reason, intimidated by the whole deal.
Well, you raised some interesting points, and one of the underlying themes, I think, or one of the underlying kind of tie-ins to a lot of these points is that podcasting has really become to radio broadcasting, or has changed essentially the idea of being a radio broadcaster. The way that the advent of ebooks has changed traditional publishing. It was always so difficult to get a book published. And if you did get a book published, the way that the traditional publishing sort of blueprint, the paradigm it has always been set up, was that it just wasn't very favorable to the author. In fact, the author was probably, the most put upon of all of the principals, and that was the person that actually wrote the material. Well, with respect to podcasting, it's very difficult, of course, for somebody to get their own radio show on a radio network. You got to be, well, maybe you have to be like a Jim Paris or a Sean Hannity or somebody like that. But the average person, who is not a Jim Paris, who is not a Sean Hannity, who is not a Rush Limbaugh, that person obviously doesn't have the same sort of access. And, like you talk about iTunes, iTunes has become this great platform for the podcaster, the way Amazon has become a great platform for the ebook writer. And, the other parallel that you talk about, which is really important too, is, for people who are intimidated because they feel like, well, gosh, I don't know that I could really support a radio show the way I hear my idols on radio being able to pull that off. Well, you know what? It's not really the expectation of people listening to podcasts that you have to be quite to that level. That's not really what they're looking for. In the same way that person who's writing, who's reading an ebook is necessarily expecting quite the same level of length, maybe quite the same level of quality. But that's a good thing. This is the new media is an everyman media. That's what I call it. It's an everyman media. And in the same way that the listener is truly the everyman, the listener and the reader, if you're talking about an ebook, the person providing the content, it's okay if that person is the everyman too. So it's neat. It's unfortunate. I'm glad I was really excited this week when you said we were going to talk about podcasting, because this is an area that even as us who are professional new media guys, we probably don't talk enough about.
Yeah, and it is interesting how easy that it is, and a lot of people don't know this. They would be shocked to know that it's free to have a podcast up on iTunes. Who would have known? I mean, who would have known that? I mean, you could just go into business with Apple, and they will distribute your podcast for free. I mean, it's crazy that people don't know this. And many times I'll mention this to people, and they'll look at me like, yeah, right. You've got to have like a radio studio built into your house. You've got to have an announcer to introduce your show. You don't need any of that. I mean, you could literally do this with just a basic recording function on a computer. And there's even free software you can get, which is called Audacity editing software that you can use to edit your podcast. But all a podcast is, it's an audio file. I mean, it sounds so complex. All it is it's a recording. It's all that it is. So if we were to go back to the days of like the cassette tape, all the podcast is just I press the play and record button on my little cassette recorder and I record something, and then I take the tape out and I send that off to iTunes, and now the whole world can listen to what I recorded. That's in essence what's happening. Of course, we're not using physical cassette tapes. We're using MP3 files, which, is probably a lot easier to deal with than a physical cassette tape. So in any case, the reason we're mentioning all this is we do have an online course. My name is Jim Paris. He's Bob Yetman. And we do have an online course over at MakeMoneyWithAWebsite.us. One of the things we talk a lot about in our internet business training is podcasting. And the reason we're talking about this tonight is over the next month, I will be teaching 2 special classes just for our members that will be covering all of the nuances and the ins and outs and details of getting up and running with your very own podcast. So this would be a great time to join our training program so that you could get in on these special training nights, workshops for podcasting. So let's get into our list here. We've got a list tonight of the 5 steps of starting your own podcast. Number 1 is pick a topic. Okay, no duh, I've got to have a topic. But let me tell you why I want to mention this. Because the internet rewards niche players. So I'll give you an example. I have had discussions with people, Bob Yetman, that go something like this. They'll say, I want to start a podcast, and I want to do a podcast on nutrition. And I'll say, great, can we drill down? And they'll say, I don't know what you mean. I'll say, let's get more specific. If we just do one generically on nutrition, it's kind of like we're taking on the whole world. There's lots of people that have podcasts on nutrition. Can we drill down? And they'll say, well, what about nutrition for kids? And I'll say, okay, that's really good. Can we drill down again? And then they look at me with a blank stare and say, I'm not following you for sure. I'll say, well, let's get even more specific. And then they might say, okay, nutrition for kids that have ADHD. Bingo. Now we have a topic that is a winner, because when we're playing the game of niche marketing, just like we want to be number 1 in Google, We want to also rank really highly in iTunes, and we want people to find our podcast. The more you drill down, the better position you're going to be in to dominate. Now, this doesn't mean that all you can have is one podcast. In fact, you're looking at two guys tonight here. We actually have 4 podcasts. We have 3 public podcasts, which honestly we haven't recorded new episodes for those in a little while, but we record a private members only podcast for our personal finance site, Christian Money Plus. So we have 4 podcasts. So there's nothing to stop you from going back and having other podcasts. But really, by drilling down, you're going to have a chance to rank very, very highly. So step 1, Bob Yetman, is pick a topic. Your thoughts on step number 1?
Yeah, I think sometimes where people get a little bit intimidated or confused is, and look, when you're new to this, it's entirely understandable, and presumably we're mostly speaking to people, to an audience tonight that are largely unfamiliar with the ins and outs of podcasting and this related media. One of the things that really I think throws people is, like, when you talked about really drilling down, they start to get worried, like, well, is there really going to be enough of an audience for that? The answer is absolutely there will be. And this is something that when you can really, I mean, it is theoretically possible to drill something down too far, but you've got to go a fair ways, usually a much deeper than you think as the person kicking around a topic idea, to get to a point where it's just too narrow. And you want that topic, like that idea of the way that you broke it down, and getting to the point where we're talking about nutrition. It's going to be a podcast about nutrition for children with ADHD. That's, you think of all of the people who are searching for information on that topic, but also importantly, topics that may intersect with that topic but aren't necessarily that topic in and entirely of itself. They will still come across your podcast and will think to themselves, this isn't necessarily exactly what I'm looking for, but I'll bet I can get some good nuggets of information from this. And that's all you need. And of course, this is separate from the people who are looking for information on essentially your entire topic. So you don't have to be intimidated by that. And I know I've come across this before, like on the ebook side of things. People are wondering, well, gosh, you're talking about really drilling down this topic, or talking about just when people are choosing a theme for maybe an internet-based business that they have. What should my theme be? Should it be auto repair? Well, maybe it shouldn't be auto repair. Maybe it should be, auto repair of, Mustangs from the 1960s and 70s, or, whatever it could be. So you make a really good point.
That's exactly right. And you can get an idea too, folks, just by looking around on iTunes to take a look at what else is out there. So the second step, and we'll do a quick screen share here to show people this, if we can get back here too. Okay, and the screen sharing is actually working tonight. Believe it or not, it hasn't worked in the last couple of weeks, but let's do one right here and show people what this page looks like here. Bob, can you see that okay, the Audacity?
I'm looking right at it.
Yeah, so the way to find this really is to just go to Google and type in Audacity audio software. And this is free. It's free, and you can actually, let's just pull up a screenshot here. See if it'll give us a little bit of a larger view. This is what it looks like. It's very easy to use. You can not only edit on this, you can even record on it, and this is totally free. So step 2 is you need to produce your audio, and again, it doesn't have to be anything complicated with like a big musical introduction and an announcer's voice. If you have that, great. You don't need it. In fact, sometimes that can actually work against you. So what we're talking about here is creating your audio. It can be as short as 5 or 10 minutes. It can be a half hour long. It could be an hour long. Um, and I think that, my biggest piece of advice would be to be conversational. Don't write out what you're going to say. Maybe you'll write out some bullet points about what you're going to talk about, but you'll get better over time with it. You don't have to worry too much about the quality. In fact, some episodes of my podcast I record on my sailboat, and I'll actually tell people, if you hear splashing in the background, that's a fish or a dolphin. If you hear a creaking sound, that's just my boat moving back and forth. So, and people almost kind of enjoy that informalness that a podcast can have. It's sort of an intimacy that you can have when you are recording it that way. But, step two is produce that audio. Get your first episode out there. It's not difficult to do. And then we'll just skip ahead here to number three. You've got to have a host for your podcast. Now, what is that? What is a host? Well, people don't know this, but the actual audio that you record is a file. It's a computer file, just like if you typed a document up and you save that document to your computer, that's a file. Well, this is a file also. It's just an audio file. So most typically it's going to be what's called an MP3 file, and that file has to be stored somewhere on a server so that people can access it. Now, this sounds like someone's probably watching tonight saying, okay, now he's got to the point where I'm convinced this isn't for me. This is just as easy as if you were to, let's say, attach a Word document to an email to send it to a friend. It's just about the same thing involved to get your audio file up into your hosting account so that people can download it on iTunes. And almost all of these services will give you the step-by-step, so it's super easy. Anybody can do it. And if you want to learn about what the different options are that are out there, you can just type in podcast hosting, and you'll find a ton of these out there. For example, even services like Podomatic that will provide this to you for free, that you can actually do this. Now, one of the things you should know, that there's a difference between a free hosting service or a paid hosting service, is that with a free one, you're going to have a limit on how much total files that you can have in storage with them. So what happens is, over the course of a few months, you'll reach the point that you've hit your maximum number of files, and then they'll start deleting the oldest one. So if you want to keep an archive, like in our case, our archives go back 4, 5, 6 years in some cases, you'll have to go with a paid service. And when we talk about paid, most people are probably going to spend less than $10 a month for a paid host for their podcast. And maybe you'll start out with a free one and see how much memory you're using up, and maybe you'll keep the free one for quite a long time until you have to upgrade to their paid side of what they do. But Bob, we use a service called BYO Audio, which we've used for years. And you know how quick this is. You and I will record a podcast, and usually within 15 minutes I'll email you back that it's been edited and it's uploaded now to our host, which is BYO Audio, and then within 24 hours it'll show up over at iTunes. It's not a big deal to publish a podcast.
It isn't. And so, we want people to understand, look, if you've got a message, if you've got something to say, if you want to have your own personal radio show, do not be at all intimidated about the process of going from conception to reality. I mean, don't be intimidated by it, because it's not difficult. This is one of those things where we kind of get back to, and I think to myself, well, maybe that's part of why there aren't more people doing it, is they think to themselves, just without really analyzing it and really seeing the evidence for themselves, they just kind of prospectively decide, oh yeah, this, there's going to be a lot to this, and not only am I going to have to get equipment, but there's going to be a big process, and it's going to involve editing, and I have no idea how but that just can't be easy. These things are simply not difficult. So I mean, you do have to have a little bit of courage at the outset to say, look, I'm going to go ahead and see this through. And if you're willing to see it through one time, see the entire process through, you'll keep doing it. You absolutely will. And I tell you what, it's a lot of fun. I mean, even today, Jim and I have been doing this for years and years and years, putting out podcasts, different kinds of podcasts. We used to have a Sunday night podcast. Jim just recently had a Sunday night podcast that's being replaced with an actual radio show going across a large network, but we do we do podcasts during the day. We do all kinds of stuff, and I always get a kick out of when Jim sends the file over, because he actually on his end he'll edit it and he'll send it over. And I just get such a kick out of it. I mean, this stuff is just so great. And there's nothing we're doing that you can't do. And the more technical side of this, and I put that in parentheses, the more technical side of this is not really that technical at all.
And if you're just joining us, I'm Jim Paris. He's Bob Yetman. We're talking about the 5 steps to starting your own podcast. And podcasting is getting hot again. So if you're somebody that thinks, oh, that's just something, an old technology like the 8-track tape, you're wrong, because now that we've got all these smartphone devices, everybody has what they need to listen to podcasts. A lot of people listen to them right on their computer, but there's all kinds of neat little apps now that you can grab for your Android or your Windows device where you can actually subscribe to podcasts, and then every time a new episode comes out, that podcast gets downloaded to your device and you can listen to it on your schedule at your convenience. Our website is makemoneywithawebsite.us is our site for our training program, which we talk about the A to Z of internet marketing. But coming up this month, we're going to be focusing on podcasting with our students. And so tonight we're focusing on that as our topic to sort of find out if you're out there, you're interested in learning more about podcasting. Join us in our special training, which is our featured topic for this coming month, which is podcasting in our training. So we talked about picking a topic. We talked about producing the audio. We talked about uploading your audio to a host. And now number 4 is write a description. And you're going to need to write a description for the podcast itself. That is, I have a podcast and it's about nutrition for kids with ADHD, and I'm going to write a little paragraph about the podcast itself. But then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to need to write a description for each individual episode. So maybe one of the episodes is, I don't know, let me just pick out something crazy, like the importance of sleep and a good breakfast to kids that have ADHD. Now, I'll maybe write more than just that one sentence, but what I'm doing now is I'm identifying the particular episode's content. Now, people will find you in one of 2 ways. They will find you by searching generically for podcasts and looking at your general overall description of your podcast. So, for example, your podcast might be on Bible prophecy, and someone that's looking just generically for Bible prophecy would find you. But if someone's looking for something really specific, like they want to know the Antichrist's role in Bible prophecy, well, they might not necessarily be attracted to your general podcast per se, but they might be attracted to a particular episode that you do on how to identify the Antichrist. What are the traits of the Antichrist? So when I mention here step number 4 is writing a description, we're not just talking about a general description for the podcast itself, but also for each individual episode. And Bob Yetman, this is not very different from what we talk about when we talk about writing a blog post and then doing, selecting your keywords, your tags, if you will, or being careful how you write so that you've got certain, golden phrases in your content that will help the search engines to find you. Because the analogy would be someone finds your podcast, the analogy would be someone finds your blog, but then the second part of this would be somebody finds a particular blog post you've written versus someone finds a particular episode of your podcast. And I find it amazing how many podcasters will name their podcast Episode 3.
Yeah.
That's the name, and the description is Episode 3. Now, you know what? I've never been interested in searching for anything called Episode 3. But I kid you not, there are very smart people that have, goodness, they've got internet marketing backgrounds and everything else,
Sure.
and this is how they name their episodes.
Right.
I don't get it, but this is something we'll get into a lot in the upcoming trainings we have, is the importance of that general description of your podcast, and then the rather wordy, if you can be, description, hitting on all those hot button words, keywords as we call them, in the description of each individual episode. And Bob, it's kind of like this. People might find you through one of any number of different doors. Maybe they're attracted to one particular episode you do, and now they become a fan of your overall podcast. That is very, very likely to happen in many cases. So this is why having a niche for your general podcast concept or title or topic area is good, but then to even go a step further and really drill down even another step on your individual episodes.
Well, and this is, I'm actually going to use this as kind of the entryway to talk, to talk about the training and the benefits of the training, because there may be some people at this point in our presentation this evening who are starting to think just a little bit like, okay, this isn't like I'm going to be able to necessarily, get to the end of this hangout and do maybe my own podcast from kind of A to Z without any glitches. The fact is that we like to give away enough information that, if you are a particularly industrious person and you feel like that's something you can do, that you're actually able to do that. We have no reservations, hesitations about that whatsoever. But what you're talking about is something that if people are coming here interested in podcasting and maybe don't have an internet marketing background necessarily, they may be a little bit curious about, well, okay, yeah, that's a really good point, Jim. How do I go ahead and get my podcast found by people who are looking for that topic? Is it, is there any kind of inside baseball? Well, the answer that there is that there is, and unfortunately, that's going to be outside of the scope of what we can do here in this hangout. But that is, as you said, you're getting ready to do a couple of really, great sort of inside baseball presentations on podcasting. And this is one of those topic areas that I think people would really do well to want to learn more about.
And, we're talking tonight about iTunes, but there's lots of other places that you can put your podcast to be downloaded. We just don't have time to get into those tonight, but that will be covered more in detail with our training. And then step number 5 here, believe it or not, is rinse and repeat. And the reason that I put that down, people might think, oh, that's kind of clever and cute. But here's the deal. Here's what we do know. We know that podcasts that have regular, ongoing, recurring episodes attract a much larger following than sort of the shotgun approach, where somebody has an episode, maybe they don't do another one for a couple of months,
right,
and maybe they wait a week and all of a sudden they are inspired, they do one a week later, then 3 months goes by. People consume podcasts along the same lines that they consume like episode television. There's a correlation there. Don't ask me why it is, but if you can get someone in the routine of knowing that, okay, it's Friday morning, and that that weight loss podcast or whatever it is, that stay-at-home mom podcast, the next episode should be up. I'm going to listen to that. When you can get people into that kind of a habit, just like when they watch TV or they know that Rush Limbaugh comes on every day around lunchtime on the East Coast, when you can get people into that kind of a habit, or, oh, it's the first of the month, it's time for that Jim Paris podcast, that's how podcasters really build a following, is by being consistent. And here's the downside of the fact that you can be flexible with podcasts, in the sense that if you did a live show, and let's say your show is every Friday morning at 11 and you've got to report to a radio studio, that issue of creating a new episode each week and being timely and getting it out, that's sort of all an afterthought to the fact that you've got to show up at that studio. So without that hanging over your head, as the podcaster, you've got to create a discipline as to creating regular, ongoing episodes. It could be once every week. It could be once every month. But whatever that schedule is, you need to try to stick to that schedule, because when you stop producing the new regular episodes, that's when you're going to lose that momentum. Because remember how this works. People don't just find your podcast one time, but in a lot of cases, they subscribe to it, which means they click a little button. That little button then says, I want to be notified when this guy has a new podcast. And whatever device they're using to consume those podcasts, they're going to get that alert that, oh, it's Friday, there's another podcast available for you, and that's how you build a following. And Bob, I'm going to also say this before we talk about church podcasting, which I want to get into here for a minute as well, because I know there's a lot of Christian people watching tonight. I think that we should mention, I really believe this, that there is an emotional connection you can make with someone through a podcast or through a video cast like this that you simply cannot make with a written article. You could be a great writer, all that's great, but just adding a picture, for example, to your blog will endear you to your readers a little bit more than if they didn't have that picture.
Sure.
But then you add that voice to it. There's something about the human voice. Somebody starts listening to your podcast weekly or monthly or whatever your schedule is, and it's almost like you're now part of the family.
Sure.
And I know this is going to sound weird to people, but for example, there are people that I listen to regularly on the radio. Like one of my favorite show hosts is George Norrie, and I had a chance to meet him a little over a month ago. And honestly, and I told him this, I said, hey, it's like meeting a family member. And he laughed and he said, yeah, he said, it is funny how radio will do that, how you listen to someone over the years and it's almost like they're part of the family. And it's a really great opportunity to break the ice with people. You're a lawyer, you're a real estate agent, a financial planner, a mortgage guy, you're an author, whatever it is, that people want to hear your voice. And whether it's true or not, they feel like they get to know you better by hearing your voice. I've had so many people over the years, Bob Yetman, email me and tell me when they've met me in person that, man, you know, I just love listening to your voice, Jim Paris. I feel like I know you. You're like part of my family. Your voice sounds like somebody that I can trust, a trustworthy voice. I hope some of that's true, but you know, there's just something about the human voice that allows us to connect with people, and that's why podcasting, I think, is so magical and can give us such an opportunity that we don't get with a written word.
Well, it's another example of how video/audio gives you an opportunity to personalize your relationship with your audience in a way that writing simply does not. And you make a really good point in that you can be a fantastic writer, but it doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. You know, people will read your stuff because it's very well written. People will read your stuff because you are a very good writer. But it's much less likely that they're reading your stuff because they have developed the kind of personal connection with you that can be developed when somebody is familiar with your voice or somebody is familiar with the combination of your voice and your appearance. And, you know, for people who have a message, for people who want to build an audience, you know, we always tell folks, look, don't leave any stone unturned. You have the ability to go ahead and have a blog, have a website that has a blog. Go ahead and write. Reach people that way. You can reach people through video. Reach people through video. Start a YouTube channel. That's something else we talk about in our trainings extensively. You can have a YouTube channel. You can upload videos to the YouTube channel. But you can also have a podcast. And you can reach people with your own new media-oriented, new media-based radio show. And, you know, I think everybody out there has that radio show, depending on to what degree they are fans of talk radio, where they can say, yep, I just love listening to the Thus and So show. I love his voice. I never miss it. And you know what it is? Most of those people, if they're honest, will say they don't miss it or they make sure they don't miss it, as much because of that personal relationship that they've essentially established, at least with the voice, as it is that they've established, as it is that they like the content. And you open yourself up to a whole new way of being able to really attract an audience, assuming that's what you're looking to do. And if you want to start a podcast, the assumption that we're making is that you want an audience of some degree.
And we're going to do something kind of neat tonight. Before we tell you about our special offer tonight over at MakeMoneyWithAWebsite.us, I want to mention this for those watching who are Christians, people that are involved, as congregants in a church. Many times, you can take a pastor's message from a Sunday morning, just the message portion of the service, edit that down, into the 20 or 30 minutes sermon, and start a series of podcasts. And this not only would help to expand your church, but it would also get that message out worldwide. We're all about getting out, the word, the gospel message around the world. And there are a lot of people that are shut in. They can't physically go to a church. There are people that live outside of your community that would probably enjoy your pastor's teaching. And this is something you could do after going through our training, would be to be able to go into your church and offer the service of taking that sermon each week and putting it up on the internet. I mean, what a blessing that would be to a church for someone to take that over if someone's not already doing that. I know a lot of churches are already getting into podcasting, but even just for the members, you're out of town and you missed the service, you want to hear the pastor's message, you can just go right onto iTunes or Podomatic or wherever and download that and listen to it. Or maybe you want to listen to it again, or maybe there was a great message at your church on Sunday and you like to share that with some of your friends that don't attend your church. Say, hey, Mike, Pastor had a great sermon on marriage or on finances or whatever, and I want to share this with you. You can send them an email with a quick link to that. These are the kinds of things that you can do. So there's a lot of different applications here, business-wise, ministry-wise, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're going to do now is just a really quick screen share here to tell you about our overall internet marketing training program. And Bob, is my screen sharing working all right tonight?
Looks good.
Okay, so where we're at is MakeMoneyWithAWebsite.us. And when you go here, you'll see that we really teach on A to Z. In fact, we have over 500 hours of videos in our archives for our students. So that means tonight, if you enroll, you'll get your username and password tonight, and you can log in and actually start tapping into those videos tonight. There's a lot of videos in there on podcasting as well as lots of other topics. All of our new students get a free microphone headset, which you can use in the training to talk to us. All of our students get a free website, a hosting account, and a free blog account as well. So you're, in a great position here to really get all the tools in your toolbox that you need, not just to learn podcasting, but learn all about internet business, and internet marketing. Now, normally, our standing deal is that for $149 that you can enroll, and then that's your one-time activation fee, and then it's just $9.95 a month to stay in our program, and you can cancel at any time. Tonight we're going to do something kind of special. One of the things Bob doesn't even know about yet, but I'm just going to offer it because I feel like doing it. What we're going to do tonight is $149 for the year and no monthly dues. That part of it, Bob did know I was going to do.
Okay.
That is available. So you just click on the Sign Me Up Now button right here, and you'll see there's the $149 one-year membership option, which that will likely go away probably within just a few hours. In fact, I would say this to you: if you want that deal, grab it before midnight tonight. If it's after midnight on Wednesday, June the 4th, if it's after midnight, then what I'm going to advise you to do is email me first to make sure that we're still honoring that. In fact, if you see it up there, we're still honoring it. If you don't see it up there, we're not making it available, but I guarantee I'm going to leave it up until midnight tonight. Here's the second thing I'm going to do. I'm going to give everybody that gets in on this deal a no-cost 15-minute Skype consultation with me about their podcast. Anything you want to ask me about, this is a one-on-one with me about your podcast. What should you title it? How do you get started? One-on-one, you and me on Skype for 15 minutes. I don't do that often. I don't offer this very often simply because I don't have time. So don't expect that to happen very often to get into the future. I'm throwing that in there tonight as it's a surprise to Bob. He didn't know I was going to do that. I can't always do that, but consider it like a one-on-one lesson with me and you, just the two of us, talking about your podcast. We'll be having that discussion over Skype. And those are two things I'm going to do for you tonight. I'm going to give you the year with no monthly fee, and I'm going to give you a Skype consultation for 15 minutes, just you and me, one-on-one. And by the way, I could probably charge people double that, Bob Yetman, just for that Skype consult, but we're just throwing that in as a free bonus. So they're going to get all this stuff. And if you want to check out what's there, just type in your computer, make money with a website.us. You'll see everything that we have going that's in that training program, which includes unlimited 24/7 support through our dashboard. You can ask unlimited questions. It includes 10 live workshops each month. It includes access to over 500 videos in our student archive. It includes your microphone headset. It includes your free website hosting account and your free blog. And it includes no monthly dues for a year and the 15-minute Skype consultation. All that tonight for $149. Bob Yetman, what say you?
I don't know. Maybe we should also throw in that we're going to go set up their podcast for them at their house.
I don't know if I can go that far.
But I say that like that because, that's a lot of stuff. And he's 100%. He's telling the truth. I had no idea he was going to throw in the bonus 15-minute Skype call. If you're somebody who's maybe kicked around the idea of maybe joining this training and you haven't, for whatever reason, the combination of the 149 with no monthly dues, which I still, as one half of the business, I still, whenever we do it, I'm like, okay.
And Bob, think about it from this standpoint. Over the course of 1 year, that's 120 live trainings for the 149. Not to mention any of the other stuff, including the 500 videos in the archives that we have for them, or the unlimited support, or any of the other stuff. But just for the next year, you get to attend 120 classes. I would say 90% of them are live.
Yeah,
they're not all live, but about 90% of them are live.
But they're all new. I mean, every month.
New, yes.
They're all new. I mean, every month you get 10 new live trainings, and the vast majority of them are live trainings. And even with the trainings that aren't live, if you have questions, because you're a member, of course, you get the unlimited email access to the staff to ask a question about anything, your own stuff, the trainings, whatever. I'm still a little bit stunned by you throwing in the 15-minute a Skype call as the bonus with Jim Paris. And you know what? I mean, let me say this. I don't, a lot of people say, well, gosh, you're Jim's friend and his partner, and of course you're going to blow his heart. Look, Jim's getting ready to get back on radio here shortly with Genesis Communications. He's doing a brand new radio show. I mean, Jim is a busy guy doing a lot of different things, and the opportunity to be able to, in addition to the fact of all the trainings that he does, to be able to interact with him like that on Skype about your own particular podcast ideas or questions, concerns, whatever. I mean, that's great. I mean, this is a great. I mean, I feel really good. Not a little bit humbled too about just this offer that you're making here, because I mean, I've always thought it was a good offer, but this is like unbelievable.
Yeah, so if you're here tonight and you want to get a podcast going, uh, you'll find this opportunity probably nowhere else. I doubt that Dave Ramsey would do a one-on-one Skype call with you to talk about how to get into podcasting or radio, or really anybody else who's doing this would do that. I'm going to do that for you tonight. So that kind of takes away all the excuses that you might have, that you get that opportunity in addition to all the other stuff. The website is makemoneywithawebsite.us. Make money with a website.us. Again, tonight, join, no monthly fees for a year. The 15-minute Skype consult, the free headset, the free website hosting account, the free blog account, 10 workshops a month, unlimited Q&A through our support ticket system. The 15-minute Skype consult is really huge tonight, something we haven't done before, but something I want to offer to make myself available to talk with you one-on-one about your podcast and my ideas and recommendations for you. All right, we're going to close it out. We've been here for an hour. It was a great one tonight, lots of good information. And on behalf of Bob Yetman, I'm Jim Paris. Again, the website, makemoneywithawebsite.us. Here as always to help you make the most of God's money. We'll talk to you next time.